Bill S219, non-nuclear sanctions against Iran. At the heart of S219 is the implicit rejection of the 2015 United Nations P5+1 deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran, also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. President Trump does not like the JCPOA, and he is looking for ways to get out of the agreement. With help from the Republican House and Senate, he has already brought into law a bill that is similar to our S219, entitled Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. His next target is the JCPOA itself. In spite of unequivocal statements from the IAEA that Iran is complying with the agreement, Washington seems hell-bent on finding a reason to withdraw from the agreement. The U.S. is alone among the P5+1 signatories in its belief that Iran is in violation of the JCPOA and that the agreement should be abrogated. Richard Nephew, former Deputy Principal Coordinator for Sanctions Policy at the Department of State and current Senior Research Scholar at Columbia University, has said, I quote, "It seems there is a faction within the administration that is trying to lay the basis for getting out of the agreement on the basis of cooked books." Colleagues, we all remember how badly cooked books turned out in the lead-up to the Second Gulf War, when the US and British governments were hell-bent on finding weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I do believe that there is popular demand among Iranians for a more open society. Diplomatic engagement with Iran is one way in which Canada can support Iranian civil society, working especially with the diaspora community across our country. Since the signing of the JCPOA, Iran has in fact seen sharp growth in its international engagement. The lifting of economic sanctions has led to increased foreign investment from many countries, for example, from France's Total and Russia's Gazprom in the oil and gas sector, and Italy's Ferrovie dello Stato and France's AREP in the rail and transportation industry. According to the 2017 World Investment Report, Iran has seen an increase in its foreign direct investment by 63% since 2016. Professor Nader Hashemi, director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Denver, goes further. Quote, "I think Bill S219 is counterproductive. In my reading, it represents more of the same. Specifically, it continues the pattern of short-term thinking on Iran." The passage of S219 will damage Canada's efforts to re-establish diplomatic relations with Iran and to use engagement as a way to encourage positive change. Testimony from Global Affairs Canada has made this point crystal clear. Assistant Deputy Minister for Europe, Middle East and the Maghreb, Alex Bogaliskis, wrote in a letter to the Senate Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committee, I quote, "The government believes that it is through dialogue, not withdrawal and isolation, that it can advance Canada's interests, including consular services to Canadians and trade and foreign policy interests. Bill S219 would likely hinder the re-establishment of, quote, normal, unquote, diplomatic relations with Iran for two reasons. One, it would constrain the discretion and therefore the capacity of the government to re-engage with Iran. And two, Iran would likely respond negatively to its introduction," unquote. Bill 219 will not only be counterproductive for diplomacy, but also for civil society engagement between Iran and Canada. Dr. Victoria Tamasebi Bergani, Assistant Professor of Women and Gender Studies at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, has written, quote, "Bill S219 will prevent a constructive re-engagement with Iran and will destroy the hope for any positive impact on Iranian political process. My concern is that this bill will deny Canada and Canadian Iranian diaspora of any constructive role in supporting pro-democracy movement within Iran." Richard Nephew has summed it up nicely. Quote, "My concern is that in practice, Canada would simply find itself on the margins of international relations with Iran," unquote. It's occurred to me that being on the margins of international relations with Iran is perhaps the very goal of the proponents of S219. If that is the case, you have yet another reason to reject this bill. My vision of Canada in the world is that of a confident nation that engages with other countries despite sharp disagreements in order to resolve problems and advance Canadian values. Colleagues, S219 is well-intentioned, but badly conceived and ultimately self-defeating. Please vote against it.